Now, as we're hearing, sustainability has and is moving up the agenda in companies globally. So let's delve further into what climate leadership means at different organisations. This is the focus of our next panel discussion. And let me introduce our moderator for that. Please welcome Marta Iglesias, Associate Director at the Carbon Trust. Welcome, Marta.
Good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to this session where, as Sasha was saying, we're going to talk about the climate leadership and also the value and the opportunities that climate leadership can bring to organizations. I'm really pleased to be joined today by our panelists, all of whom are really driving change and really showing leadership in this area within their organizations. We have been reminded today about how the climate change agenda has evolved dramatically over the last couple of years. We have seen scientific developments such as the report from the IPCC in talking about the impacts of 1.5 degree warming. We have seen societal demand for change with Greta and with the Extinction Rebellion movement, and we continue to see extreme weather events that are linked to climate change, such as the most recent example being the wildfires, the fires in California. So now let's think about 2020. This was, and it is still, a very challenging year for reasons that none of us would have foresaw. But it has also been a year where organizations such as the ones joining us today have continued to push forward and to drive with even more energy their actions against climate change. And really this is showing a lot of leadership and is helping raise the global level of ambition against the challenges that we are facing, and is really showing us that action is happening today. And I'm sure we will talk about during this session about some of the challenges that this brings, and there are many. But I also want to talk about the opportunities for corporates to participate and to drive the green recovery, and also to capitalize on a low carbon economy where the choices of consumers and the decisions of organizations are driven not just by short-term economic growth, but also the mid and long-term impact on the planet and on society as a whole. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to our panelists today. We've got with us Hamno Wickman from Bonava, a leading housing developer headquartered in Sweden. Vicente Saiso Alva from CEMEX, a Mexican multinational company that is a leading global supplier of cement and other building materials. Ingrid Reumert from VELUX, the world's #1 manufacturer of roof windows. And Basiye from Safaricom, the largest telecommunications provider in Kenya. Good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to start by asking all of you to tell us a bit about what climate leadership means for each of your organizations. So perhaps let's start with you, Anna. Bonava was the first residential developer in Europe that had its carbon reduction targets aligned with 1.5 degree of warming, and also approved by the SBTi. So can you tell us a bit about how you're working towards these targets as part of Bonava's strategic plans?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for the introduction. We are a residential developer. So we are one of these that has been pinpointed today as type of company that might have challenges to actually talk about net zero. And we buy land to develop and construct homes and happy neighborhoods that we sell to both consumers and investors in 9 different countries in Northern Europe, both inside and outside of the European Union. And we are rather young as a standalone company. listed on the Swedish Stock Exchange since 2016, and we used to be part of a bigger construction firm with a broad scope, NCC. We have a sustainability agenda to guide us on how to succeed with our strategy in a long-term sustainable manner in a changing world, where we, for example, predict demographic changes and growing groups of people with low disposable incomes as our markets, and at the same time see the consequences of global overconsumption of natural resources since quite long, and the effects of the ongoing climate crisis is already closing in on us. And this while we are operating in an industry where productivity is historically low, and also is very carbon intense, both during production, but also use of sold products, the homes and neighborhoods that we deliver. So we have both social targets in our sustainability agenda, for example, to improve our capacity to develop affordable homes for the many in happy neighborhoods, and we do measure also that in a data-driven manner. That is not the topic today, but if you're interested, you can Google Bonava Happy Neighborhood Report. And we can see a lot of correlation with what's on topic today, the ecological targets, where we do have the science-based target as one. And we are committed to achieve absolute greenhouse gas emission reductions for our scope 1 and 2 until 2030 by half from 2018. And here, and we have aligned to the 1.5 degree pathway. And we have a physical intensity target for scope 3, and that is all of scope 3. And just to mention what we were talking about previously today, our scope 3, upstream and downstream, is 98% of all our climate impact. So that is where we have the really big challenge. And our scope 1 and 2, that is only 2% then. But also looking at the different, historically, our industry and also municipalities and regulation has focused a lot on the use phase of homes, whereas we can see in the mapping that we have done for the science-based target that actually 75% of the total climate impact comes from upstream emissions, the embedded carbon. So our main focus going forward, again, as other speakers have referred to, renewable energy is one thing that's achievable, but where we have the main success in the future and the main transition map is going to be in cooperation with all our value chain, with all our suppliers, identify the strategic partnerships, work over time, long term, and also, but we are going to need to work into a much more digitalized way of developing homes and neighborhoods. We have to work more towards a more industrialization, and this goes hand in hand at the same time to reduce costs, to be able to deliver more affordable homes.
You were talking about the big impact, the big share of your scope 3 impact that comes from production materials. So it'd be really good to now hand over to Vicente from CEMEX, knowing that the cement industry is one of the largest emitters of carbon dioxide as part of the carbon dioxide that results from the production process. So CEMEX is doing leading work in identifying, validating, investing in the right solutions to address this challenge. So can you tell us, Vicente, what are the main areas of focus for CEMEX in this context?
Yes, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you, Carbon, for the invitation. And yes, I think it's very relevant for me to explain further and how it links to the construction industry. No, we are in the building materials business. We produce cement and concrete. Concrete, let's say, it's our end product, is the one that you see in the final project in buildings and infrastructure. We have our production process is highly intensive in the use of energy. we have to get very high levels of heat to be able to do the chemical process that derives in the production of cement. So we are a traditional user of fossil fuels, and also the chemical process from our raw material, which is limestone, also emits CO2. So as a sector, in the cement sector, we have always been aware of our high environmental impact, and we have been working now for more than 20 years in doing measuring our CO2 footprint and finding ways on how to reduce it. We have, let's say, two aspects that we're working on. One is our internal production process, how we can make it less intensive in energy use and less intensive in CO2 emissions. So we measure this by measuring our CO2 intensity per unit of cement production. That is one level of effort. And the second one is what type of final product, concrete, and what's the footprint of that, the embedded footprint of that concrete when we supply to a building company or to a contractor in a job site. No? Within our internal process, we have reduced our emissions by 22% compared to 1990 baseline. That's the baseline that we are using in our industry to measure the progress that we are doing. We have recently established a target for 2030 in which we are going to push this further and bring down CO2 emissions by 35%. That is in line with what science establishes for the 2-degree scenario. Carbon Trust has helped us do a very thorough verification of this target and all the technological reduction levers that we have put in a roadmap to achieve that target. So with the help of Carbon Trust, we are now very confident that our 2030 target is very robust, and we have the levers and the elements that will help us to get there. But our ambition has to go further, obviously, because at the end, the target is how to become carbon neutral, no? How we can deliver to construction companies and to the end user of buildings and infrastructure a carbon neutral product. So for concrete, we have set a 2050 target of delivering carbon neutral concrete, which will require some technologies that are not currently available. For example, a big one for us in our industry is carbon capture. We need to capture a relevant part of our process that we will not be able to reduce by the technological levers available right now. And also the use of that CO2 to convert it into fuels and other different uses. That's like 1/3 of the equation has to come from that. And then the remaining comes from doing innovation in our product. We are anticipating actions. We have launched in France and in the UK, and we are ready to roll out in other countries like in Colombia, Germany, etc. The first CO2 net zero CO2 concrete that is now available in some markets. So we are anticipating the use of binders and a new generation of binders. We have been able to reduce the footprint of our concrete by 70%. And then we are partnering with reforestation projects to offset the remaining portion of that to arrive to a carbon neutral concrete. So we are anticipating all that effort into delivering in the short term a product that has these characteristics. As I mentioned, we are offering it already in France, in the UK, soon in Germany, next in Colombia, and we are going to roll it out all throughout the world. And we were going to continue to do innovation, and that innovation targeted to deliver a product that a construction company or a builder or a developer can quantify in the embedded footprint of a building and consider it neutral, no, from climate action perspective.
Great. Thank you. It's great to hear that, even on the face of the great challenge to decarbonize the cement industry. CEMEX has great ambitions, and you're looking also at it from an angle of both the organization and the product to achieve carbon neutrality. So I guess for you, Ingrid, for VELUX, you are also focusing partly on your organizational emissions from a historical point of view, with this very ambitious commitment to achieve lifetime carbon neutrality by 2041, the 100th year anniversary of the company. How are you also, in addition to looking at your organization, how are you also incorporating the value chain in your plans for the future, for the climate change future plans for VELUX?
So thank you for the question and for the invitation to be here today. And you put me right where I think we belong in VELUX, which is between Anna and Vicente, because we are, of course, a taker, you could say, of the building material. Then we produce the components, and then we deliver onto companies like Anna. So in that sense, we are actually the link there in between. But it's true, we launched a new sustainability strategy here a month ago, which in total has 15 targets looking at all different aspects of our organization. We spent around almost 3 years looking into every corner of our business, and also, of course, working with partners, etc. And we've come up with a new concept for corporate climate and nature action, which we call a lifetime carbon neutral. And it focuses, of course, on the climate challenges, but it also focuses on what we often call the hidden crisis, the loss of nature or the loss of biodiversity, which is often a bit lost in the debate on climate. So what we have set out to do is to, in the future, make a dramatic reduction of our CO2 emissions following the Science Based Targets Initiative, the 1.5 degree scenario. And that means that on scope 1 and 2, we will be 100% carbon neutral in 2030, and that our value chain, the scope 3 part, will reduce with 50%. So that is, of course, very ambitious. Also because some of our main components to produce a window is glass and aluminium, which are both materials which have quite high CO2 emissions. And for that, of course, means that our product has the higher embedded CO2. Mm-hmm. But then on top of that, we have added the historical dimension. So we have calculated all the CO2 we have emitted since we were founded in 1941, and we've added another 25% as a safety buffer on that. That amounts to 5.6 million tons CO2 in total. And then we have entered into a 20-year long partnership with the World Wildlife Foundation, where we will, through a number of projects with them, capture the equivalent of this historical carbon footprint, the 5.6 million tons. So that means that when we arrive at our 100 years anniversary in 2041, we will be a lifetime carbon neutral. So in that way, it's a big commitment. We think, of course, it's ambitious, it will be difficult, and it looks into the future, and then you could say takes responsibility for our past CO2 emissions as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, so Karen, if I may turn to you now, I think similar to the organizations that we've just heard about, VELUX and Bonava and CEMEX, you are also at Safaricom setting science-based targets, and your targets have been approved by the SBTi for your operations and your value chain. And I think in the case of Safaricom, it would be really interesting to hear how your climate program is integrated as part of your overall sustainability program, considering also that Safaricom is doing a lot of work in other areas in Kenya, such as economic and social impact, education and healthcare, etc.
Thank you so much for that question, and happy to be here. So Safaricom is a telecommunication company that operates here in Nairobi, Kenya, and we understand the importance of sustainable business practices. We consider the effects of our activities on the natural resources as well as on the environment. We have developed an environmental policy and a climate policy because we recognize that we want to be a responsible and effective company in terms of managing our climate, managing sustainability, and that kind of thing. So as a company, our purpose is to transform lives. Stems from transforming lives. By 2050, that is the global target that we gave, but internally we set for ourselves a much tighter timeline and deadline of 2030. So this aspiration has been integrated in our sustainability strategy, and we have drawn a roadmap to get there by 2030. So if I look at some of the energy sources from our carbon footprint and in our sustainability report, the key sources of our scope 1 and 2 is energy use, that is electricity and diesel. So as a company, we do use a lot of diesel. So what we did is to develop a comprehensive energy strategy that sits in line with being a net zero company. And as you've rightfully said, we set science-based targets to assist our action plan implementation. So what we have done is we have drawn a roadmap. We have looked at energy efficiency. We've looked at other options other than diesel, and we've realized that as a business, we thank God we operate in Kenya because here we use hydro. Hydro is the main power source for the country. But because of frequent power blackouts and the grid not being in areas where we all operate, what we did is either we extend the grid, and where we have to use a generator backup, we have integrated it in such a way that we have solar and hybrid solutions. So we have hybrid solutions that run on solar. Thanks be to God, we sit on the equator, so we have the sun throughout. So what we did is take the climate and our net zero ambition and integrate it right into our sustainability strategy. If you look at our strategy and what we've done here at Safaricom, we've also integrated 9 out of the 17 sustainable development goals into the company strategy. And so goal 7 and goal 13, we mirror the two, where our climate ambition and aspiration sits, has been integrated right into the business. And the other thing that we've done as part of our integration is that all the employees in Safaricom do work against a sustainable development goal. So this way, it makes the goals, the targets, fresh and top of mind. And here at Safaricom, we learned the power of using experts like yourself, Carbon Trust. We reached out for you when we were struggling with exactly what does being a 1.5 ambition, 2 degrees ambition, what can we do, what should the journey look like? And we have learned a lot by working with other people and listening to other people. So we developed our strategy based on guidance from experts, and now we are working towards being the net zero. And if I'm honest with you, when we did it with Carbon Trust, we realized at the rate at which Safaricom was going, we were going to be net zero actually would never be net zero, would be minus 24% off by 2074. So we had to change direction and tact in the business, and that's why we went into integrating. We went into looking at things like how do we invest in the network. So we dropped wind energy from our investment because it didn't make sense, it didn't work. We went for solar. We looked at energy efficiencies. So here in Safaricom, if the power goes out, before it jumps straight to generator, we have deep cycle batteries where they kick in fast and they can last 8 hours. So we use diesel generator as the last resort. And let me say, integrating this into our energy strategy or into the sustainability ambition was the best thing we did for the company, because it brought difficult conversations to the table. Long-termism versus short-termism. Short-termism says, let's go for diesel. Long-termism says, let's look at the sustainable green energy that we can use and then invest. So because we have shown the business that we have a long-term strategy, this is up to 2030 internally, how do we get there? So we started working on solutions and integrating this into budgeting plans, budgeting cycle. Here we've discussed things like the green bond. Maybe we need to accelerate by raising a green bond. So the company is thinking, do we raise the green bond? Because we need money, we need costs so that we can sufficiently get to net zero by 2030. So I'll pause here first and I'll add more as we go on. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Karen. And you've just touched on the green bond. And I know, Anna, that Bonava has only last month released or issued its first green bond. So it'd be really good if you can tell us about what were the reasons behind issuing it and also how it's been received.
Yes, it's been very well received. Interest was high. It was oversubscribed, and I would say the science-based targets as the solid foundation for having a scientific background to the ambition for Bonava and to reduce the risks related to the transitions we are in, all of us, was part of that. And our green financing framework is also linked to eco-labeling of the homes we deliver. And the main reason, of course, is also to have a broader scope of financing opportunities. And what we can see is that we have 75% of all our financing is now green. So what we can foresee, as well also been in discussion today in the panels and the seminars, that we can really see that in the financial investors, the financial institutions are a driver now. When Bonava was started 5-6 years ago, that was not really the case. Then there were other stakeholders driving the agenda, but the financial actors are very important now.
Good. So I know, Vicente, you want to also comment. I've seen your note. You want to also comment about green financing.
Yes.
And if I may, I want to also ask you another question relating to more like the opportunities that CEMEX is exploring from the point of view of your climate and program and your carbon action. So are you seeing the opportunity to differentiate your products for them from them being low carbon? Are you seeing this as an opportunity today? If it's in the future, when do you expect this to be really something that delivers a value for CEMEX?
Perfect. First, I will address the green financing issue because it's a continuation of what Anna was saying, and it's also very good coincidence. Yesterday, we announced that we have entered into a $3.2 billion sustainability-linked loan from our financial institutions that went into that agreement. We have heard that this is the largest sustainability-linked loan in emerging markets in Latin America and one of the largest in the world. We are very happy to link our financing to green targets because it reinforces our strategy. This sustainability-linked loan is linked to the performance that we have in 5 key performance indicators. 3 of the performance indicators are related to climate action, which is reduction of CO2 emissions, use of renewable energy, and reducing our clinker factor, which is our intermediate product. One KPI is on water use, optimization of water in all of our production process, and the 5th one is on biodiversity, how we do conservation of biodiversity in our mineral extraction activities. I think this is a great way to go deeper into our commitments because this these targets that are now part of how we are measured in a financing arrangement are part of our 2030 targets that we have publicly committed. So it's like a virtuous cycle, no? In which everything that you are targeting to do becomes relevant, and it provides a benefit. No, we get a softer interest rate if we achieve these annual thresholds, and that's an additional motivating factor within our company. No? So I'm glad to be able to comment that, and that's a good example of what are the opportunities that are also going to come from doing green financing and linking those to your performance. No? And the second part of the question is, yes, we are, let's say, Europe is ahead in terms of demanding low CO2 products because of the aggressive ambitions that European Commission has set for the continent in general. So we see here that in Europe, you have already demand for this. We have launched this carbon neutral concrete product, and we have seen great response about it. It's already been incorporated into at least one relevant infrastructure project in the UK. So the immediate reaction to it has been very positive. That initial reaction has made us be aware that we can accelerate the launching and roll it out in different markets. We are going to test how it does in an emerging market like Colombia and then in Mexico. In emerging markets, let's say that demand is not so clear, but we know that it can be a good differentiating factor versus other types of products. So we are going to bet that this could be a relevant differentiator. No? Maybe in emerging markets it will take a little bit longer to get there, but we are sure that developers and construction companies that are ahead of the curve and that are more aware than others will start to use them, no? And start to incorporate them as a relevant attribute also when they communicate to their end customers that the lower impact of the projects that they are delivering to them. No? So we are confident that this is going to build up, and from Europe is going to extend to other markets.
Good. And Ingrid, can you just quickly come in on that point? How are you seeing from VELUX that kind of competitive advantage from your climate program in your products? Are you?
Yeah. I mean, definitely in this, but I think it's still early days in the construction sector. So I think, like what Anna said and Vicente also, it is also a belief that this is the way that the construction sector, that regulation, customer demands, etc., will be moving over the next decade. So I think we can see definitely consumers, end users becoming more and more interested. Also, people who are specifically interested in buying our products. So it's rising and it's moving from the professional sphere, where we have been seeing it for decades among architects, specifiers, and others. And we can see it now with, you can say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith as well, which is of course important since they're the end buyers of our product. But it's also, of course, a leap of faith, believing that it will be an important differentiator, that it creates value for the customer, and also it creates better company brand and position in general. And then, of course, let's not forget, it is still what the planet needs also. So we're seeing it, but it's still early days, I think, with the green transition in the construction sector.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be great to hear quickly, Anna, your perspective from, say, the other side of the fence of this value chain, right? To what extent are you incorporating climate commitments and carbon performance into your specifications or your procurement decisions?
As Ingrid says, it's early days, and we are also investigating how to do this in a most proper way to give a good effect and also find the balance of cost efficiency and climate impact. And what we have done, for example, is looking into our industrialization to synchronize, get bigger volumes, and get to develop our building systems, the actual master plans for our buildings. And we have, in one example, from a life cycle analysis perspective, identified a better method to use prefabricated concrete elements, where we use less amounts of cement and find ways to reduce substantially reduce the climate impact from that. But it's going to be step by step, and this is also, it will take some time before we can see the effects. You also have to remember that in the development business, a project, an investment, it can take 10 years until you actually have the building there. But I think the regulation is going to support us. We see as it's coming in the demand for a life cycle analysis, also for in the building norms. That is going to have an effect, I think, quite. And we really hope that this is not going to be a differentiator for us. And that's not a hope. For us to be able to succeed, we need for everybody else to follow. We will not be able to succeed with our science-based targets unless we have the whole industry with us. But as we are right now, we think that will, both from the financial perspective, but also the regulators and demand from companies like Bonava, we will drive this transition and make it happen.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point there about, how your organizations are being sector leaders and driving everyone, to raise that level of ambition across all sectors and across all businesses. I'm afraid we are not going to have time for questions from the audience today, because we need to keep to time, and we need to continue with the content that we have later this afternoon. So I want to just ask each of you, please, to have one closing statement, a couple of sentences on what is your top recommendation for businesses that are looking to align to net zero and to follow your path. And Karen, can you please start with your view on this?
Yeah. I think from me, I would say, if you want to start on this journey, first, measure your carbon footprint, get to know your status. So that's a good place to start, by knowing your carbon footprint. Then secondly, start setting yourself targets that you can meet. So you could go the science-based way, you could go and register your footprint at the Carbon Disclosures Project, but it's good to know, good to set the targets, then prepare the carbon reduction projects. So once you have your projects prepared, you can do clean and renewable energy, clean cities, clean transport, look into innovations such as IoT. How can Internet of Things help you get there, accelerate there? Look into your supply chain. For instance, at Safaricom, we looked into our supply chain, and we realized that we used to get many things by air, and we could still get the same things by ship, just that we had to adjust our timelines and reduce our carbon footprint. So I think you can start looking at what are the projects, where are your key emissions? Because if you don't get to know your status, you will not know where your key emissions are. Then focus on long-term sustainability gains, while at the same time balancing your current corporate needs. So e.g. energy efficiency, renewable energy, carbon offsets, so that by the time you're doing this, you're able to align with the net zero economy that you aspire as a business.
Great. Thank you, Karen. So measure, set targets, and set a program. Thank you. Ingrid, please, just one or two sentences on your recommendation for businesses.
Yeah. So, of course, follow the most ambitious trajectory of the Science Based Targets Initiative, the 1.5 degree scenario, if possible. Try to align also with the biodiversity challenge. I really urge everyone to take a look at that. It's the hidden crisis and it's irreversible. And then I would say, if you can, maybe there is a possibility of capturing carbon. We've chosen the nature-based solution targeting biodiversity, but looking at your historical emissions as well. And then maybe one final point, engage in advocacy as well. Push your governments, because at the moment, I think businesses, we are at the forefront and we really need some clear guidelines and some clear perspectives from our government. So I would include advocacy in the work that we as sustainability professionals have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Great point. Thank you. Anna, very quickly, please.
I can only second that. I think for me, I would say that the most critical part here is the mapping, to understand your business model, to understand where you have an impact, where you have the potential. And I would say to start with a science-based approach and to not risk sub-optimization, moving things in between the scopes is quite important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And lastly, Vicente.
Yes, not to overlap with all the great insights that the other speakers have commented, I would say that in metrics and targets, it's extremely useful to get an external verification, because you get the point of view of somebody external, objective, to tell you if what you are planning to do is realistic, if technology is readily available for you to use. So that's very helpful. And I would say that in developing the technology that we are going to need to get it to all the way to carbon neutral, we need to do collaboration with many different types of organizations, many different types of companies, many different types of technology developers, startups, and we need to open our companies to work in collaboration with others. Otherwise, we will not get there.
Yeah, great point. Thank you all very much. We're out of time for this session. Thanks for participating in the panel, and thank you for all the work you're doing against climate change. That's all for this panel. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.